I achieved strong returns on my portfolio with zero leverage. Today, I continue walking you through the logic behind my analysis and how it guides my investments. In my previous video, I mentioned some investment opportunities in rare earths and rare metals, but I didn't go into detail about the underlying logic behind their potential rise. Now, let's take a closer look at that topic. Recently, some media outlets revealed that the United States International Development Finance Corporation is in talks with a New York-based investment firm to establish a joint mining investment fund worth around $5 billion. As we know, the United States International Development Finance Corporation, or DFC, is a federal government agency. If this report turns out to be true, it would mark a significant attempt by the U.S. government to directly participate in large-scale mining transactions, meaning that the Trump administration could directly invest in the mining sector to reduce America's dependence on foreign countries for critical minerals. This news did not come out of nowhere. If you trace the developments carefully, you will find everything makes perfect sense. Since taking office earlier this year, Trump has consistently pushed to restore America's dominance over strategic mineral resources. In March 2025, Trump signed an executive order directing financial and loan support for domestic critical mineral processing industries to address long-standing funding bottlenecks. Then, in April, the White House announced that, as part of its plan to expand the production of key minerals, the federal government would fast-track approvals for 10 mining projects across the country. This move will directly accelerate the development of several important mining sites and rapidly boost America's domestic supply of strategic minerals. During the same month, the Department of the Interior introduced an emergency permitting system under Trump's National Energy Emergency Executive Order. The core idea was to invoke national security as a justification to bypass traditional environmental regulations, creating a green channel for strategic mineral projects. Externally, the United States has been deepening cooperation with friendly shore nations while using tariffs as leverage to ensure that America remains in a priority position in the ongoing restructuring of the global critical minerals supply chain. But regardless of the specific tactics, Trump's fundamental goal is crystal clear: to fully support the extraction and the refining of critical minerals and to rebuild America's industrial and supply chain security. These policies and financial support will directly benefit related companies and open up tremendous growth potential. For the capital market, this represents a highly certain investment opportunity, one that will likely drive significant gains in U.S. mining and new energy companies. So, how should we identify the companies with the best growth prospects? Here's one key idea for the U.S. stock market. Focus on mining and exploration companies that receive support from the Defense Production Act and the United States International Development Finance Corporation. The Defense Production Act, commonly known as the DPA, was enacted in 1950. It grants the president broad powers to mobilize domestic industries in special situations to meet both defense and civilian needs. For instance, during the COVID pandemic, Trump invoked the DPA to address shortages in medical supplies, while Biden later used it to accelerate vaccine production and strengthen essential goods supply. In the field of critical minerals, Title III of the Defense Production Act is particularly important. This section explicitly allows the president to provide loans, loan guarantees, direct purchases, and procurement commitments to encourage private enterprises to expand their production capacity for essential materials. In other words, companies that fall under Title III support often enjoy national-level backing and policy advantages. Definitely worth paying close attention to. The United States International Development Finance Corporation, or DFC, was founded in 2019 by Trump himself. It was designed to counter China's growing global influence through infrastructure projects. Initially, the DFC focused on providing loans, loan guarantees, and insurance for U.S. companies developing projects in lower-income countries. However, since Trump's return, the DFC has been working closely with the Department of Defense, extending its investments into mineral exploration and production capacity expansion, becoming a key instrument in strengthening America's critical mineral supply chain. And since this agency was originally established under Trump, its actions can be seen as a direct reflection of his will and priorities. Therefore, companies that receive both DPA and DFC support naturally have brighter prospects ahead. With national funding and policy assistance, their growth potential becomes far more tangible. For exploration companies, early-stage financing is always a major challenge. So, when the government steps in with financial support, it dramatically reduces capital pressure and speeds up project progress. More importantly, environmental approval is often a huge bottleneck for mining in the U.S. Exploration, mining, and development require approval from dozens of agencies, making the process painfully slow. But with government backing, the situation changes entirely. Under Trump's strong-handed style, these approvals could move at lightning speed because, as everyone knows, making life difficult for these companies is essentially making life difficult for Trump himself, and no one wants to do that. Using this logic, selecting the right companies becomes much easier. For example, NioCorp Developments, ticker symbol NB, is one such company I mentioned in my previous video. NioCorp has long been focused on mineral exploration and development in North America. Its flagship project, the Elk Creek project in southeastern Nebraska, has drawn a lot of attention. The project involves an investment of approximately $11.4 billion and is an underground mine. More importantly, it's the only integrated source of niobium, scandium, and titanium in all of North America, making it strategically significant. Niobium, as a critical mineral, plays an essential role in aerospace, nuclear, and other high-end industries. Yet, the United States currently relies 100% on imports, mainly from one country, China. Given the current decoupling trend between China and the U.S., that's a dangerous dependency. If China ever imposes export controls on niobium, it could easily choke U.S. industries. Clearly, increasing domestic niobium production has become a national priority. NioCorp's Elk Creek project aligns perfectly with this policy direction. Its measured niobium reserves stand at roughly 1.1 million tons, enough to meet America's demand for decades. Scandium reserves are also significant. Data from 2021 shows the mine could produce about 3,410 tons of scandium oxide over its lifetime. Scandium is a strategic rare metal used in defense, aerospace, nuclear energy, and superconducting technologies, all key areas of national importance. As a result, the project has gained strong support from the U.S. Department of Defense. In August this year, the Department of Defense announced a $10 million funding grant to NioCorp Developments under Title III of the Defense Production Act to help establish a domestic scandium supply chain, exactly echoing what I mentioned earlier. As for titanium, that's another metal I'm particularly optimistic about. With the rise of artificial intelligence and the robotics era, the demand for titanium alloys will grow to levels we can hardly imagine. Therefore, companies capable of producing titanium like NioCorp will benefit significantly. But NioCorp's potential goes far beyond that. According to surveys, the Elk Creek project also contains the second largest rare earth resource in the United States, second only to MP Materials' Mountain Pass mine. That's quite intriguing, because as we know, the US is currently trying to break free from China's dominance in rare earths by developing alternative sources worldwide. Once NioCorp starts stable production of rare earth elements, it will be in a position to capture a massive market opportunity. From a financial perspective, since NioCorp is still in the development phase, it hasn't yet generated commercial revenue and remains unprofitable. But with the US government backing, its future looks very promising. On the sales front, NioCorp has already signed binding offtake agreements covering a large portion of its expected production. Germany's ThyssenKrupp will purchase 50% of its ferroniobium output, and another 25% will go to Commercial Metals Company in the United States. As for the previous concerns about financing and environmental risks, those are likely to ease over time with federal support. Once production ramps up, the company should be well positioned for substantial returns. It's important to remember, when analyzing companies, never focus only on the present. Investment is always about anticipating the future. Take Lightbridge Corporation, ticker symbol LTBR, for instance. Its stock price has increased tenfold within a single year. I bought it at around $7.5, and my return has already tripled. But without a global macro-level perspective, even if I told you today that this company could be a sleep-to-win investment, something like Nvidia a few years ago, you still wouldn't understand why, nor would you buy it. Because on paper, it's just another small money-losing firm that most institutions ignore. Now, back to the main topic. Another company that has received funding from the U.S. Department of Defense is Perpetua Resources Corporation, ticker symbol PPTA. As of May this year, the company had received $59.2 million through a Title III Defense Production Act Technology Investment Agreement. Perpetua Resources was selected by the U.S. government because its wholly owned subsidiary controls a highly important antimony and gold mining project located in Valley County, Idaho. Once operational, this project will produce gold and silver, and most importantly, become the only domestic source of antimony in the United States. Antimony is a critical mineral I personally value highly. It is used not only in bullets and tanks, but also in flame retardants and in alloys for electric vehicle batteries. For a long time, China has been the dominant exporter of antimony, accounting for nearly 60% of global production by 2024. However, in December last year, China announced a ban on antimony exports to the United States. Immediately afterward, Washington accelerated efforts to develop and expand domestic antimony production to close the supply gap and reduce its dependence on China. At that moment, as the only large-scale antimony deposit within U.S. territory, Perpetua's project suddenly gained extraordinary strategic importance. According to available data, the project's proven antimony reserves are about 148 million pounds, roughly 67,000 metric tons. It is not only the only proven antimony source in the United States, but also one of the largest deposits outside China's control. In 2023, the U.S. Geological Survey's Mineral Commodity Summary for antimony estimated that in its first 6 years of production, the project could supply about 35% of U.S. demand. That amount would effectively cover America's core antimony needs, while the gold production serves as an additional financial bonus. According to evaluations, the antimony gold project is expected to become one of the highest-grade open-pit gold mines in the United States, with proven gold reserves of around 4.8 million ounces. During the first 4 years of production, annual gold output is projected to reach approximately 450,000 ounces. Given the current surge in gold prices, the company plans to use gold revenues to subsidize antimony production, which significantly improves the project's overall financial feasibility. For the company, this dual mining model extracting both gold and antimony offers a more stable cash flow and a higher valuation potential. An interesting point is the environmental approval process for this project. Perpetua Resources began applying for permits as early as around 2016, following the National Environmental Policy Act and the Clean Water Act. But after years of effort, little progress was made. Then, in 2025, everything changed. When the Stibnite Gold Project was listed among the Trump administration's Fast 41 transparency projects, the situation quickly shifted. In May, the U.S. Secretary of the Interior granted Perpetua the Section 404 permit, which governs discharge activities into U.S. waters, an important milestone toward regulatory compliance. By September, the company also obtained conditional approval from the U.S. Forest Service, allowing it to begin development of the antimony gold project in Idaho. This essentially confirms my earlier point. Although the United States, as a developed nation, often emphasizes environmental protection, under Trump's forceful leadership and near absolute authority, Regulatory agencies had no choice but to compromise. For the company, this is a major operational breakthrough, as it can finally move into the development stage and start making money. For the United States, the significance is even greater. This mine will provide a secure domestic supply of military-grade antimony tresified, helping America break free from its long-standing dependence on foreign sources for key minerals. Now, aside from companies directly funded by the government, there's another group worth paying attention to: companies involved in metals that Trump personally deregulated. On September 5th, President Trump signed an executive order removing 39 metal products and pharmaceuticals, including gold, uranium, tungsten, and graphite from the existing U.S. tariff list. The message behind this move is simple. If America truly didn't like these materials, there would be no need to give them special treatment. It's precisely because these metals choke critical parts of the U.S. supply chain that Trump had to step in personally. In other words, whoever produces these metals may become the biggest beneficiaries and possibly the future winners of the next major commodities cycle. Take Almonty Industries Incorporated, ticker symbol ALM, as an example. This company produces tungsten. Currently, the global tungsten industry is highly concentrated. About 90% of supply comes from China, Russia, and North Korea, with China alone controlling more than 80% of the global market. Over the past few decades, the influx of cheap Chinese tungsten led Western nations to abandon domestic production and rely heavily on imports. For instance, the United States stopped producing tungsten in 2015, and China has since become its largest supplier. But as U.S.-China relations continue to deteriorate, this trade relationship has become increasingly unreliable. In January 2022, the U.S. government passed a law banning the use of Chinese tungsten in military equipment starting in 2026. Then, in May 2024, Washington expanded those restrictions, banning not only Chinese tungsten, but also critical minerals from Russia, Iran, and North Korea. The ban will take effect in January 2027. However, tungsten is an indispensable material used in everything from smartphones and electric vehicles to missiles, artillery shells, and other defense products. Clearly, the United States cannot simply stop using it. The same applies to other Western countries, especially in Europe, where rising defense spending has further strengthened tungsten demand. Market forecasts suggest that by 2032, the global tungsten market size will nearly double, rising from about $5.5 billion to over $10 billion. In this context, Almonty Industries Incorporated is attracting strong market attention due to its ownership of 2 tungsten mines in conflict-free regions. The Panasqueira tin tungsten mine in Portugal is one of them. It has been in continuous production for over 100 years, with an annual tungsten output of about 58,000 metric ton units. Even more attention, however, is focused on the Sangdong tungsten mine in South Korea, one of the largest tungsten deposits in the world, containing an estimated 36,000 tons of tungsten trioxide indicated resources, 41,000 tons of measured resources, and 218,000 tons of inferred resources. This mine was closed in the 1990s due to low tungsten prices, but as the global race for critical minerals intensified, South Korea decided to reopen it in 2022. The Sangdong mine is now reportedly in its final pre-production stage, and initial output is expected to begin later this year. Analysts predict that with both the Panasqueira mine in Portugal and the Sangdong mine in South Korea, Almonty Industries could become the largest conflict-free tungsten supplier by 2027, accounting for roughly 40% of non-Chinese tungsten production. These are some of the case studies I've analyzed. As for other related investment opportunities, that's something every investor needs to explore independently. As long as you're heading in the right macro direction, finding promising companies becomes much easier. That's all for today's video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.